let's define some terms here, because we've seen the articles, okay? There are a bunch of resources. We all kind of feel overwhelmed even by, okay? I loved your post on LinkedIn not long ago, right? About stages of digital maturity. That post is by Harvard Business Review. Very respectful, very resourceful. So what I loved about it, and I'll share this, of course, link directly, but the notion of moving from traditional digital maturity to bridge, to hub, to platform, and going native. How do you see organizations actually situate themselves in this? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's actually, so you would start with the basics, right? So again, talking about business process management, your users, your employees, you're going to ask them, hey, let's start somewhere, right? So where do you start? And you start with really documenting those processes. From documenting the processes down, then you can kind of look at what processes are our priorities, what are our major points, where are things moving, what are our major processes, and that we can look at overall to understand, can any of that be automated. And so then you pull in different factors like RPA being robotic process automation. So it's like the first level of automation, basically. So it can come in and you can have a team or a COE, like a center of excellence, like just people that know how to automate, and using automation platforms to take those business process maps, those BPMs, to automate some functionality of there or automate the whole thing, right? So the more you automate, the more time that gives back to your employees. So not only are your employees writing these processes because they're like, hey, I do this thing every day anyway, or hey, we have these seasonal workers that come in, or we have these people that only know this functionality, and then how do we share that if something were to happen or someone gets sick, then documenting that's going to be great, which then comes into, can we automate some of that? And then when you automate it, what you're doing is, again, like you're giving that time back. That team is now gaining hours saved, and that gives them the ability to innovate and go, hey, what other processes are out there, or can we reevaluate this existing automation and do it better, or can we do more automation? So from RPA, you start to look into, like, intelligent automation, and that's when you start to really kind of dive into how do you, well, actually you go into regular automation, but either way, so you want to figure out where your pain points are. You're going to use things like process mining is something a lot of people use, and there's a lot of different vendors out there that have it. And what it does is it gives you insights into your data. It gives you the ability to look at that democratized kind of stability and say, hey, where are the pain points? Where are our goals? Work with your stakeholders, work with your leadership, and say, where do we need to be more effective and where do we need to be more efficient so that we can be more impactful and more purposeful in what we do. And so with that, it's just a matter of like gathering the details, understanding the overall viewpoint of the company, and then driving those goals forward, right? So that's overall automation, and then you can get into the more like intelligent automation. You can get into intelligent business process mapping. One thing that the Harvard Business Review article really didn't touch on, which was fantastic, was they didn't talk about hyperautomation. You hear a lot of that in the communities and out there. And hyperautomation is, I tend to look at it more as a hyper scaling. So hyperautomation usually talks about, and you have like Gartner and some of these other people talking about it. And in general, it's a neat idea. It's not something that you're going to like keep doing. It's not going to be like a standpoint. Like you got there, and then all of a sudden you're an amazing person and team because you got the hyperautomation and you're now doing this great thing. It's a matter of like you may hit that and you may see hyper scaling, and you may see that you're doing really well in the organization and really knocking it out and then automating more and more and getting that ROI, that return on investment on what you've really invested in, and what those processes are really handling. But when it comes down to it, you're going to peak and ebb and flow in some of that hyper automation, hyper scaling. So you may scale really fast and then you find out, oh, hey, we're good where we are right now. And then maybe you don't need as many bots, or you need to purchase more bots or licenses to run these automations. So that's kind of where that kind of moves up and down a little bit. So I don't see that as a standard. And I liked it how that looking at digital maturity, it doesn't really talk about it, but it does talk about how to get to those points of where you can get there, and then from past that, it's how you get to artificial intelligence, right? So artificial intelligence, like you asked, was, how do we get there? And the way we get there is we build up the documentation, understand the processes. From understanding the processes, you can automate those processes. And from automating, then you're basically streamlining the input from process to automation. So that data is now basically live and living data that can then be passed into like data sources, or um, another another form of name to call them is like a source of truth, right? So your main database that has all of your data, and a lot of it, and you have to make sure it's good data. So data that goes in, you keep it clean, keep it good, make sure you have standards and governance to keep it that way. And at which point, then once you have all the data in there, you can actually take action on it. And those actions can be done in the form of either intelligent automation, or just artificial intelligence can then take that data and actually run analytics and run test simulations and build the forms and the model ops and everything that you need, and the training data you need to ensure that it's going to maintain itself. Because if you don't, then you basically end up with like Power BI, that you're building databases, you're building these dashboards, and then you don't have the data that comes in. So every month you have to go pull that same data sources yourself, type it all up, format it, and then put it in there to get the new dashboard. So instead of having the human do all that, why don't we have the automation really handle that lift and shift? What is the goal to get the AI there?